3 days before my gran died, she pressed a wooden box into my hands and said, "Don't let Cynthia touch this." I didn't know what was inside. I didn't know it was going to change everything. My name is Lane Terry. I'm 29. I work night shifts as a registered nurse at a public hospital in Brisbane. I drive a beat-up Hyundai with a crack running the full length of the windshield. I eat whatever's left in the staff room. And until 3 weeks ago, I genuinely believed I was exactly what my stepmother told me I was. Nobody. Cynthia showed up when I was 15. My mum had been dead for 2 years. Car accident, night shift, wet road on the Pacific motorway. My dad, Travis, was a carpenter, gentle, quiet, the kind of man who built things with his hands and loved my mum in a way that filled a whole house. When she died, that warmth left with her. Cynthia arrived like she'd been sent to fix him. Big hair, designer labels bought on credit. She told Dad she would take care of everything. She told him he deserved to be happy again. She told him I needed a mother. What she did not say was that she was carrying over $80,000 in personal debt, that her last relationship ended because she opened credit cards in her ex's name without telling him, and that the only thing she actually wanted from Travis Kerry was access to my gran's 3 investment properties in the Redlands. That is Cynthia. My gran's name was Len, short for Lenora. She was 76, lived in a small weatherboard house on the edge of Moreton Bay, grew chilies in her backyard and played cards every Thursday. She was the only person in my life who made me feel like I was worth something. She saw through Cynthia immediately. "Don't let that woman fool you, Lane," she told me once. We were sitting on her back steps watching pelicans land on the water. "She married your father for what he has. When she has taken everything, she will leave him with nothing." I was 16. I did not fully understand, but I remembered. At 18, I left. Scholarships, waitressing on weekends, nursing degree from QUT. I graduated, moved into a 1-bedroom flat in West End that cost me most of my pay, and I never asked Dad for a cent. I disappeared so completely from their life that most people forgot Travis Terry had a daughter at all. Gran did not forget. She called me every Sunday. She came to my graduation in a yellow dress and cried when they read my name out. And when she got sick, pancreatic cancer diagnosed in April, gone by July, she made sure I was there at the end. That's when she gave me the box. A cedar box, brass hinges gone green with age, small enough to fit under one arm. She was lying in the hospice bed, her hands thin and cold around mine. "Lane," she said, "don't let Cynthia touch this. Promise me." I promised. The funeral was on a Saturday. Gran had asked for something small, family only, a simple service at the local church in Capalaba. Cynthia turned it into a performance. She hired a florist, ordered catering, wore cream linen blazer that probably cost more than Gran's monthly pension. She stood at the front dabbing dry eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief, while Dad sat in the front row looking like a man who'd forgotten who he was. I sat 3 rows back. I wore Mum's black dress, the only thing of hers I managed to keep. It was slightly too big in the shoulders. I held the cedar box on my lap the entire service. After the service, at Gran's house, Cynthia cornered me in the kitchen. Her son Lucas was behind her, leaning against a bench, arms crossed. Lucas was 21. He had his mother's smirk and his mother's sense of entitlement and absolutely none of her self-control. "What's in the box, Lane?" Cynthia asked. Her voice was soft, but her eyes were doing an inventory. "Personal things," I said. "Gran left it for me." Sweetheart, she said, your gran wasn't exactly herself at the end. All that morphine, the confusion. My solicitor says anything handed over in the final days can be challenged. She was lucid, I said. The hospice nurses will confirm that. Cynthia smiled the way people smile when they've already decided the conversation is over. Here's what's going to happen, she said. You are going to hand me that box. I'll have Travis's solicitor look through it. If there's anything of value, it belongs to the estate, which means it belongs to your father, which means it belongs to me. I looked at her. I thought about Gran's hands pressing the box into mine. I thought about the marks Mum had drawn on the kitchen door frame when I was little, every birthday in blue pen, that Cynthia had painted over in the first week she moved in. No, I said. Cynthia's face changed. She grabbed my wrist, her nails dug in. Lucas stepped sideways to block the doorway. You don't get to say no to me, she whispered. You never did. I pulled my arm free. I walked past Lucas, through the living room, past the guests eating finger sandwiches on Gran's mismatched plates, past Dad, sitting in his chair, staring at the wall, and out the front door. I drove home with the box on the passenger seat. My wrist had 4 crescent marks from her nails. I did not open it that night. It took me 3 days, and what I found inside was not what I expected.
It was a Tuesday morning before my shift. I sat at my kitchen table with the box in front of me, and I just looked at it for a while. My partner Willow was still asleep. The flat was quiet. Outside, I could hear the bin trucks on Boundary Street and a lorikeet going absolutely feral in the fig tree next door. I lifted the lid. Inside, wrapped in a piece of old kitchen towel, the kind with faded strawberry print that I remembered from Gran's drawer my whole life, were 3 things. A brass key, small and heavy, stamped with the number 4219, a business card for Coastal Trust Bank on Queen Street in the city, written on the back in Gran's handwriting, ask for Mrs. Woolery, Trust Department, and a letter. I unfolded the letter. Dear Lane, it read. I never told anyone what I am about to tell you because the wrong people would have taken it. In 1974, your grandfather and I bought a small block of land south of Brisbane. We paid $3,000 for it. Over the years, I used the rental income to invest. Nothing fancy, steady companies, the kind that pay dividends and grow slowly. I put everything into a trust in your name. The key opens a safe deposit box at Coastal Trust Bank. Everything you need is inside. I know you think you are not worth much, Lane. Cynthia told you that. Your father's silence told you that. But I am telling you now, you are the most valuable thing in this family. Don't let anyone take what is yours. Love, Gran. I read it twice. Then I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years, put on my coat and drove into the city. Coastal Trust Bank was in an old sandstone building on Queen Street, high ceilings, quiet, the kind of place that does not need to advertise because it's been there longer than anyone can remember. I walked up to the front desk. I'm looking for Mrs. Woolery, I said, Trust Department. Do you have an appointment? No, but I have this. I held up the key. She picked up the phone. 2 minutes later, a woman in her 50s appeared, silver hair, dark blazer, calm eyes, the kind of calm that comes from decades of handling other people's most important moments without flinching. I'm Nilla Woolery, she said. I've managed the trust department here for 28 years. She looked at the key. She looked at me. Are you Lane Terry? Yes, I said. Something shifted in her face. Not surprise. Recognition, like she'd been expecting me, not today specifically, but eventually. Please, she said, come with me. She led me through a door that needed a key card, down a flight of stairs, and into the vault. Cool air, the smell of metal and old paper. She found box 4219, slid it out and set it on the table in front of me. Your Gran established a revocable living trust in 1984, she said. She was one of the most disciplined clients I have ever worked with. She reinvested every dividend, never withdrew a cent, updated her portfolio every year until her diagnosis. She named you as the sole beneficiary, effective upon her death. I turned the key. I opened the box. Inside was a manila envelope thick with documents, trust certificates, brokerage statements, property titles, and a portfolio summary dated January of this year. Mrs. Woolery sat across from me. As of the most recent valuation, she said, the trust holds approximately $6.4 million, diversified shares, government bonds, and 2 commercial properties in Logan. I stared at the number on the page. $6.4 million. I thought about my cracked windshield. I thought about the $20 bills Gran tucked into every birthday card. I thought about eating leftover sandwiches at the nurse's station at 2 in the morning. $6.4 million. Did anyone else know about this? I asked. No, Mrs. Woolery said. She was very deliberate about that. She told me once, the wrong people are always watching. Don't give them anything to see. I closed the box. My hands were steady. My heart was not. This was not just money. This was 40 years of Gran getting up before sunrise and making quiet decisions that nobody noticed. 40 years of building something in secret. 40 years of knowing exactly what was coming and making sure I wouldn't be left with nothing when it arrived. She saw Cynthia coming before Cynthia even knew my dad existed. I asked Mrs. Woolery for copies of everything. She made them on the spot. I walked out of that bank into the Brisbane heat with $6.4 million in my name and something forming in the back of my mind that I wasn't quite ready to say out loud yet. Willow said it for me. Willow works in forensic accounting in a firm in the city. We met when I was 24. She's the kind of person who reads financial reports for fun and can spot a fraudulent transaction the way I can spot a patient who is about to crash before the monitors go off. Steady, precise. She doesn't panic, ever. When I got home and spread everything across the kitchen table, she sat with it for an hour without saying a word. Then she looked up. This changes things, she said. I know. Cynthia doesn't know about this. No. But she's going to come for it. She'll try to claim Gran wasn't competent. She'll try to break the trust. I know, I said again. Willow was quiet for a moment. What do you want to do? I want to protect what Gran built, and I want to know exactly what Cynthia has been doing with Dad's money. Willow nodded slowly. I've been wanting to look at that for a long time. Give me a week. It didn't take a week. It took 4 days. And what Willow found was so much worse than either of us expected.
Willow did not come to bed on the second night. I found her at the kitchen table at 5 in the morning, 3 coffee cups pushed to one side, documents spread across every surface, her laptop open to a spreadsheet that meant nothing to me and everything to her. She looked up. She did not say anything for a moment. Lane, she said, Cynthia has been robbing your father blind. Not spending, not overspending, robbing. Gran had deeded 3 rental properties in the Redlands to Dad years ago. Cynthia had refinanced all 3 of them without his knowledge. She forged his signature on every document, pulled $480,000 in cash out of those properties and moved it into a personal account Dad did not know existed. The mortgage repayments she was supposed to be making, she stopped 9 months ago. 2 of the 3 properties were already in pre-foreclosure. There was more. She had opened a home equity line on the house Dad built with his own hands, the house where Mum's height marks used to live on the kitchen doorframe before Cynthia painted over them. She drew $160,000 against it to fund Lucas's food truck business. Lucas, who Cynthia told everyone was an entrepreneur. Lucas, whose food truck ran for 14 months, never turned a profit and quietly shut down owing suppliers across 3 suburbs. She forged his name, Willow said, at least 6 times across 4 separate loan documents, and she was not careful about it. Different pen pressure,
different letter slant. A first-year analyst could pick it up. That is fraud, I said. Multiple counts, Willow said. Forgery and, under Queensland law, financial abuse of a vulnerable adult. Your dad is 57. Cynthia controls his finances, his social contacts, his medical appointments. She is his de facto carer, and she has been systematically stealing from him for years. I felt something settle inside me. Not anger, something colder and clearer than anger. I finally understood the whole picture. Cynthia had not just taken from me. She had spent 15 years hollowing out my father, and he had no idea. The man who built furniture with his hands and loved my mum completely had been slowly emptied out by a woman he trusted with everything. And he still had no idea. My phone rang that night, Dad's number, but when I picked up, it was Cynthia's voice. Lane, honey, she was warm, soft, a completely different character from the woman who grabbed my wrist at Gran's house. I have been thinking about the funeral. Grief makes people say things they do not mean. I want to apologize. Okay, I said. I kept my voice small, the girl from the back bedroom, the one who learned to take up as little space as possible. I will be speaking to your father, and we both agree Gran would have wanted us to handle her estate together as a family. I have arranged a meeting this Saturday at the house. Our estate solicitor will be there. Just everyone in one room going through things properly, transparently. Transparently, from a woman whose signature had been forged onto 6 separate loan documents by her own hand. Will Dad be there? I asked. Of course, sweetheart. And Lane, if you wanted to bring the box, just for transparency, no pressure. No pressure. I looked at Willow across the table. She was already pulling up the Queensland Law Society website. I will be there Saturday, I said, noon. Wonderful. I'm making that chicken Dad likes. She hung up. She thinks she is setting a trap, Willow said. She is, I said. We're just going to let her. Saturday came grey and humid, that Brisbane humidity that sits on you like a second shirt. Willow and I drove to the house in Calabar, the house Dad built. I had not been inside it in 4 years. Cynthia answered the door in a cashmere cardigan, pearls, the performance fully assembled. The living room had been arranged like a meeting, dining table in the centre, chairs on either side, a leather folder at Cynthia's spot. Dad sat at the end looking like a man who had been slowly talked out of knowing his own mind. Lucas was beside Cynthia in a blazer that did not fit. Their estate solicitor, a thin man named Harker, sat across from them with a notepad and the expression of someone billing by the 6-minute increment. Lane, welcome, Cynthia said, as if it was her house. It was Dad's house. She had mortgaged it without asking him. I sat down. I placed the cedar box on the table. Cynthia's eyes went straight to it, that same look from Gran's kitchen, inventory, calculation. Harker cleared his throat and began explaining how Gran had apparently died without a formal will, and how under Queensland's succession law, her assets would flow first to surviving children and then to named beneficiaries of any informal instruments. He was wrong, but Cynthia had not told him the truth, so he didn't know that yet. Lane, Cynthia said, would you mind showing us what's in the box? I opened the lid. I took out the letter. I took out the business card. I took out the key. It opens a safe deposit box, I said, at Coastal Trust Bank on Queen Street. Cynthia leaned forward. And what's in the safe deposit box? I reached into my bag, not the cedar box, my bag, and I pulled out the folder Mrs. Woolery had copied for me. A revocable living trust, I said, established by Lenora Terry in 1984, naming me as the sole beneficiary, currently valued at approximately $6.4 million. The room went completely still.
Cynthia's face moved through 3 expressions in about 2 seconds: confusion, disbelief, and then something underneath them both that looked very much like fear. "That's impossible," she said. "Gran lived in a weatherboard house. She drove a 20-year-old Corolla. She couldn't have—" "She reinvested every dividend for 40 years," I said. "She never touched the principal." Harker was already reading through the documents. His face had gone pale. "This is a properly executed trust," he said slowly. "Licensed trustee. It bypasses probate entirely. This is not part of the estate." "Cynthia, meaning Cynthia," she slammed her hand on the table. "That woman was not in her right mind. She was on medication. She couldn't have been thinking clearly when she—" "The trust was established in 1984, 40 years ago." For the first time in my life, I watched Cynthia Whitmore run completely out of words, and that was when I put the second folder on the table, the red one. "While we're here," I said. I slid the red folder to Dad. He opened it with hands that were not quite steady. "Willow is a forensic accountant," I said. "Over the past 4 days, she reviewed every financial record connected to this household. Dad, I need you to look at what is in front of you." He looked. "Those are the refinance documents for the 3 Redlands properties Gran deeded to you," I said. "Cynthia refinanced all 3 without telling you. $480,000. The money went into an account you have never seen. The repayments stopped 9 months ago. 2 of those properties are already in pre-foreclosure." Dad's mouth opened. Nothing came out. "There is also a home equity line on this house," I said. "Opened 18 months ago. $160,000 drawn against the equity of a home you owned outright. A home you built yourself. That money funded Lucas's food truck, which closed owing money to suppliers across 3 suburbs." Lucas's smirk was gone. He was staring at the table. "And here," I said, I pulled out the last page, "this is a comparison of your actual signature, Dad, taken from documents you signed before Cynthia arrived, against the signatures on every one of those loan documents. They do not match, not one of them." Dad looked at the 2 signatures side by side for a long time. Then he looked up at Cynthia. It was the first time he had really looked at her in years. Not through her, not past her, at her. "Vicky," he said. His voice was quiet. "Is this true?" Cynthia's composure came apart fast. "Don't you dare," she said. She was pointing at me. "Don't you dare come into my house and do this." "It is his house," I said. "You borrowed against it without asking him." "I did what I had to do," she said. Her voice cracked. "Do you have any idea what it costs to maintain a life? What it takes to keep everything together while your father sits in that chair and checks out of his own existence? Someone had to make decisions. Someone had to take control." "Someone had to forge his signature," Willow said. Her voice was completely level. "Forensic elder abuse. That is a serious criminal offence in Queensland, Cynthia. Multiple counts." Harker stood up. He closed his notepad. "I need to be clear that I was retained solely for the estate matter. I had no knowledge of any of this." He picked up his briefcase. "I strongly recommend everyone in this room obtain their own legal representation immediately." He left without shaking anyone's hand. Cynthia turned to Lucas. "Say something." Lucas looked at his mother, then at the documents, then at Dad. "Mum, did you actually forge his name?" "I did it for us," she said, "for our future. Everything I did was for this family." "He is not our family," Lucas said. "He is her dad, and that was his money." Cynthia looked at her son like he'd just spoken in a language she did not recognise. The room went quiet.
Dad was still holding the page with the 2 signatures. He was running his thumb slowly across the bottom of the page, the signature that was not his, trying to understand how the woman he had trusted with everything had been signing his name to documents he never saw. I moved to his side of the table. I pulled a chair close and sat beside him, the way I used to sit beside Mum when I was small. "Dad," I said. He looked at me. His eyes were wet. "I'm here," I said. "I'm not going anywhere, but I need you to let me help." He nodded, small, barely a movement, but it was the most I'd seen from him in 15 years. I stood up and faced Cynthia. She was breathing hard. The pearls, the cardigan, the whole performance was still technically on, but nothing behind it was holding anymore. "Here's what happens next," I said. "On Monday, I'm filing a complaint with the Queensland Police and the Office of the Public Guardian. Forgery, fraud, financial abuse of a vulnerable adult. Willow has already prepared the full submission, every transaction, every document, every forged signature with a date and corresponding bank record." "You can't do this," Cynthia said, but her voice had no weight behind it anymore. "I'm also applying for emergency financial administration of Dad's affairs," I said, "which means you won't be able to access his accounts, sell his properties, or sign his name ever again." "I'll fight you," she said. "You're welcome to," I said, "but the evidence has already been sent to 2 separate solicitors and backed up in 3 places. There's nothing left to destroy." Cynthia looked around the room, at Dad, who wouldn't meet his eyes, at Lucas, who was staring at the floor, at the empty chair where her solicitor had been sitting, at me. The girl she'd moved to the back bedroom, standing in her father's house with $6.4 million and a forensic audit of every lie she'd ever told. She picked up her bag and walked to the door. She stopped with her hand on the knob. "That money won't make you happy, Lane," she said. "It won't bring your mum back, it won't fix your father, and it won't change what you are." She paused. "You were nobody when I met you, and you're still nobody." "Maybe," I said, "but I'd rather be nobody than be you." The door closed behind her. Lucas didn't follow her out. He sat there for a long moment, then he looked across the table at me. "I didn't know about the signatures," he said. "I swear I didn't know." I looked at him, at the blazer that didn't fit, at the face that had spent 21 years copying his mother's expression and was now trying to find one of his own. "I know," I said, and I meant it.
My name is Lane Terry. I am 29. I work night shifts as a registered nurse at a public hospital in Brisbane. And 3 weeks ago, I walked into a bank with a brass key and walked out holding 40 years of love made real. Let me tell you what happened after the door closed. Cynthia was charged on 5 counts of forgery and 3 counts of financial abuse of a vulnerable adult. She pleaded not guilty. The evidence was overwhelming. Willow's forensic work was airtight. Every transaction matched to a date, a document, and a bank record. Cynthia's solicitor negotiated a plea. She will serve 14 months in minimum security and pay full restitution. The 2 properties in pre-foreclosure were saved. Barely, but saved. Lucas texted me 2 days after the meeting. No preamble, just, "For what it is worth, your gran was the only real person in that whole family." I believed him, not because he had earned my trust, but because I saw his face when he asked his mother if she really forged Gad's name. That was not performance. That was a person realizing the ground under their feet was never solid to begin with. We are not close, but we are not enemies either. Dad is still in the house, his house. I hired a builder to fix the things Cynthia had let fall apart. The roof, the back steps, the hot water system that had been making a sound for 2 years that nobody did anything about. And I did one more thing. I went to the kitchen door frame, the one Cynthia had painted over in the first month she moved in.
I got a heat gun, and I took my time, and I worked back through the paint layer by layer until the blue pen marks came through underneath. They were faded, but they were there. Lane started school. Lane lost her front tooth. Lane, my brave girl. Mom's handwriting, right there in the wood. I called Dad in from the lounge room. He stood in the doorway and looked at it for a long time without speaking. Then he put his hand flat against the frame and just stayed there. When he finally turned around, he was crying. Not the distant kind of crying I had seen from him for 15 years. Real tears, present ones. "Your mom would be proud of you," he said. "I think she would too, Dad." That is the thing about what Cynthia did to him that I want you to understand. She did not just take his money, she took his attention. She took his ability to notice what was right in front of him. She fed him just enough comfort and just enough confusion that he stopped trusting his own eyes. And he let it happen. Not because he was weak, because he was grieving, and she knew exactly how to use that. He has a long way to go, we both know that, but he is present now in a way he hasn't been since Mum died. He called me last Sunday just to talk. Nothing important, just talking. It was the best phone call I have had in years. The trust is fully transferred. Mrs. Woolery manages the portfolio. I have not quit my job. I still do night shifts. I still eat whatever is left in the staff room at 2 in the morning. I did fix the windshield, though. The money sits there growing the way Gran always intended. Quietly, without anyone watching. It is not a trophy. It is not something I earned. It is 40 years of a woman getting up early and making small, careful decisions and never once telling anyone what she was building or who she was building it for. She built it for me because she knew. She knew that one day a woman like Cynthia would come along and try to tell me I was worth nothing, and she wanted to make sure that when that day came, I would have something solid underneath me, something no one could paint over or sign away or take. I'm sitting on the back steps of Gran's house now, my house. Moreton Bay is silver this morning. There's a pelican sitting on the end of the jetty not moving. Willow is inside making coffee, and I can hear her talking to the lorikeet that keeps landing on the kitchen windowsill. I am not afraid. That is the whole story. The girl who was told she was nobody turned out to be the only person the most important woman in the family trusted with everything she had spent her life building. Gran did not leave me money, she left me proof. Proof that she saw me, proof that she believed in what I would become before I believed it myself. If you have a gran, a grandfather, an aunt, anyone older in your life who shows up quietly and consistently and never makes a big deal of it, pay attention. Those are the ones who are really watching. Those are the ones who are building something for you in the background while everyone else is too busy performing to notice. And if someone in your life has spent years telling you that you are worth nothing, I want you to hear this directly. They were wrong. They were always wrong. My name is Lane Terry. I am a nurse. I am a daughter. And I am the woman my gran knew I would be. That is enough. That has always been enough.